As a country that plays host to the largest slum in the world, 36% of Kenyans live below the poverty line. Growing up, poverty was all around us, so rife in fact that it did not even have a name, just the norm, an acceptable way of life. It is only in looking back at the experiences that we have since given it a label. Join us today as we talk to a successful young woman.
Join and share this moment of truth and laughter. It's all for mix. Join and share this moment. Hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. For the Joanne R show.
Hi Helen, it's so nice to have you on set. Helen is a doctor, she's a good friend of mine. Today we are going to be talking about extreme childhood poverty and some of the traumas that it has on us in adulthood. So Helen, welcome so much to the couch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to have you. Are you ready for this conversation? I know it's not it's not the easiest conversations to have, but that is the reason why we do all of this. Because when we tell our stories, people out there can relate. Pick an area or two of your life that they can relate with, because in silence, shame festers. In silence, there's a lot of taboo, and I feel like when people talk about their experiences, even the most difficult ones, then we can live our lives more freely, knowing that we are more similar than we are different.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself.
My official name, Helen Awuor Ondeng. I'm a medical doctor, currently pursuing a Master's of Medicine in Anesthesiology and Critical Care Medicine in one of our institutions of higher learning within the country. I'm glad to be here and to be looking forward to this conversation, this very hard conversation. Yes.
One of the things I picked about your childhood is that you had quite adverse childhood experiences in relation to poverty.
True.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
I grew up in a family of 10. I'm the fifth born in a family of 10 kids. My dad was casual laborer, so to speak. Well, not a, I don't know how to put this, but mtu wa mkono is how I would put it. In one of the institutions that's in Homa Bay County. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so to speak, doing the small businesses here and there, vitu tudogo. Not really, I wouldn't say I was brought up in a well-to-do family, definitely not. Because then would not be having this conversation anyway.
Yeah.
So, growing up, I went to several primary schools because, well, living conditions we had to, where we were was a little far from most schools around. That was back in the day. At least these days we have primary schools within a radius of like 15 kilometers. You get quite a number of
15 is a little.
Back then, they weren't so close, and then the terrain of my home area, so at any one point was always trying to figure out which one is more comfortable. So we had to move quite a bit until, say, somewhere in class 6. That's when I got to be stable. From class 6 to class 8.
You went to the same school?
I went to the same school. And that's the longest I was in anyone's school. Yes, and then went to high school. A whole different experience.
Where did you go to high school?
St. Albert's for a girl, Bolanda.
You first went to Kenya High School, right?
Yes. I had a stint. I did a stint in Kenya High.
For how long?
About 2-3 months stint, basically first term. And you remember back in the day, the reporting days for first years, or Form 1, would be sometime mid-February, almost March.
Yeah.
And for the Form 1s, first term would be very short. Just a couple of weeks. So I was admitted to Kenya High School. I went, stayed for first term, And then second term, before the not the semester, half term.
Before the half term,
Before the
yes.
half term of the second term, first form rather. That's when I had to now come deal with the fee situation. Yes, and then I was sent away for school fees. I never got the school fees, so I never got to come back. And that marked a pause in my high school education.
You took some time at home waiting to get admitted to Landa, or you transitioned smoothly?
The plan was to get money and get back to school. It was for my parents to get the money. They never did.
Mm-hmm. And
it was more of I was in this space where I really didn't know what the future held for me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
There were a number of options that came to the table, not all of them education.
What are some of the things that came to your mind?
When you get, a teenager or a young person or a child for that matter, there's a way life should go.
Yeah, there's the idea.
There's a structured way, like you go to school, this happens. Like when you deviate from that, like you're in this space where you really don't know what next. Not that I was considering that, no, I was never considering that, but you just find yourself in an environment where these are the things that come at you because you don't have anything else to do. It's between waking up and going to bed. What's there for you? What do you do? And then in that space, you meet people with different ideas who come making suggestions, and it is what it is. You just find yourself like thinking back, that is what was available. Not that it happened,
You
but
want to
it
go
might
deeper.
have as well. But thank God it did.
You want to go deeper into
in short,
specific.
when a girl is not in school, what is the next thing that will come to the table?
Marriage.
And
Yes.
that's why we get people marrying young. So at this point, I was about we are talking 2000, around 2000 actually. So I just turned 15 at that point.
Also considering the rural environment.
Actually, it wasn't rural environment.
Oh, it wasn't rural. I don't know why in my head I've always imagined that it was a rural environment.
It wasn't. It was in Nairobi.
Oh.
In Mathare.
So you guys were at some point in Mathare before you came home, or the other way
I was
around?
staying with my uncle.
Oh.
My parents were home.
Oh, okay.
I left home in January 2000 to go to Nairobi and then go to Kenya High. And then when I was sent home for fees, I could not travel home. For one, I couldn't travel alone. I'd never had that experience. It was just not safe. Secondly, there was just not even that money. Fair. Hata fare kukula kukwa nayo. So I would just go to my uncle's place. He was living in Nairobi, Mathare at that point. That's where I would be. And then the people you meet there, also like they're just people getting by, living from hand to mouth. The funny thing is that at that point, you don't even see that they're living from hand to mouth because I had been, or rather, one is exposed to so little.
So that is your reality.
So yes, so something slightly better than that, like living in a house with electricity, just having tap water. At that point, that looks like a big thing.
It was not conceivable to you at that point.
Yes, so when this person goes work and they are able to maybe spare 100 shillings, 50 shillings, by then standards and by then my own exposure, it looks huge. It looked huge. And when this person comes up with these stories and insinuations of, things could be different, you're tempted to actually give it a thought. Thank God that phase didn't last very long. I moved when it became so clear that I wasn't going to go back to school, at least not anytime in the near future. At that time, I moved now to go stay with my sister who was living in Nanyuki. So I moved from Nairobi to Nanyuki. That was sometime in June of 2000. And that's where I was from June 2000 to September 2001.
Being at your sister's house and then going back to London. Did somebody come in to maybe assist you with the fees? Maybe you got a scholarship or?
Yes. My late brother-in-law, when he learned that I'd been out of school for so long, he wasn't amused.
So now you're back in Uganda, you resume classes and you're killing it.
Yes!
Killing it.
12th September 2001. I'll never forget that date.
That's the day you reported to Uganda.
That's the day I reported to Uganda for one, the opening day of the third term.
Also, you missed the middle term?
Oh, I missed everything from everything.
Yeah, because you only did 3 months at Kenya High, so you missed a whole
the rest of that.
Yeah.
So I had to start again from 1. Yes, so I reported to school. The head teacher was very, very supportive. She was very nice. One Mrs. Akunja.
And it also helps that you are a very smart girl, Helen. I keep bringing that up. I don't know why. I don't know why you're retracting it. But I mean, because I remember you led your class. Because I mean, people don't go to university to study medicine just because they slacked in the class. You must have made some very good grades at Ulari. You left some history, it seems.
I did make good grades.
Yes.
I got the kind of place that got me into medical school. Yes.
Yes. So.
And yeah, let's just say I got good grades and to medical school. But then again, it wasn't just it was a lot of work. Remember, with everything else that had happened, there's this saying growing up, something that my dad kept on telling us. Actually, there was a picture in our house of an aeroplane. And then there was this person that was stepping off the aeroplane in a graduation gown and a graduation cap, and it had this inscription on it: "Education is the best investment one can make for his or her own future." And that is something that my dad kept telling us. Like, it was every single morning before going to school, and in the evening he would tell that to us every day. So it's something we grew up with. So I knew that we had nothing, like I had no options. Education and excelling in education was my plan A, plan B. It was my plan. The 26 letters of the alphabet. That is what it was.
Yeah, you didn't have a fallback plan. That was it. Like, it had to work.
It had to work. There was no other option. So I did give it my best. I don't know if you can say it was smart, maybe. I don't know. I don't really think so. Maybe it was just really, really hard work at that point. Because I mean, if I'd continued working that hard the rest of my life, I probably would be somewhere else.
I remember you mentioned something about life in Moi and how you gave it your all, but it wasn't the most forgiving of circumstances, considering that you had to work so hard in class and then you also had to do some hustles on the side.
Yes. I was a help beneficiary. Help came in handy. My big sister Joanne. God bless her sweetheart. God bless the heart of that woman. Perfect girl. So those two, help and my big sister, came through for me. And then I got work study. There was a program run by this Moi University has a partnership with Indiana University. They sponsor some kids, and then there's also the work study that paid well by then standards. Well enough. I mean, it wouldn't pay the school fees, but it was okay. It was okay. But then again, a girl has a lot of needs. So I would make chapels and eggs and just selling the school canteen. Then later on, as you grow in business, you study your clients. So the school canteen part wasn't really paying. So I did value improvement a bit. And then my chapels were priced. I had to price them higher. And then supply them. Like, I would just deliver to the clients directly. So I would make them on order. I earned some money also through that. So that way, it made my stay in school relatively better, comfortable. But then it meant that I had to now do double classwork because, between going to the wards, clerkships, reading, preparing for exams, and then hustling on the side, and then the work study. It was all so much, and I had to plan my 24 hours. Damn, I was a good planner. Really, where did all that go after I grew up anyway? Anyway, I guess I continued working hard after high school. Looks like I actually continued working hard after high school.
Into adulthood.
Yes,
into adulthood. Yes.
Yes, so I needed to, but at this point it was more like I didn't look at it as suffering. It was more like opportunities. I think my mindset was changing.
Oh, I like that
at this
mindset.
point. I was changing mindset. Yes. So I loved what was happening. I loved that I was slightly comfortable, and I loved that I didn't have to rely on my sister for everything. I love that I could give her, she could have some sort of reprieve and take care of other things, because she was still taking care of the rest of my siblings. So me getting myself out of the equation in some small way.
Give her a reprieve.
Of
A financial
sorts.
reprieve.
Yeah, not big, but it was better than nothing.
When you grow up and become an adult and you look back at some of the experiences, they were happy. It's like, I would say it's a mixed bag, right? It's a mixed bag of experiences. There are some that in your adult mind you look at and think, wow, I attribute ABCD to how, life was for me as a young girl.
But this concept of healing from pain, from hurt, this is something that comes much later, and only if, because not everybody even understands the whole concept of healing from the experiences we've had that were traumatic to us. Like we have experiences, it's traumatic, but we don't realize that's trauma until way later. And sometimes you're doing the healing, but then not against the background of healing from trauma, you see. So it's when the journey, the intentional journey of healing started, is when then I started looking at all of it as trauma. Because things like accessing counseling services, forget about counseling services, that's a relatively recent concept. Which is weird, because I'm a medical doctor, and with exposure in psychiatry and everything, it should be obvious. It wasn't. So there's this thing about compartmentalizing, where what you read and what you practice, so not even what you read, it's what you read and it making sense. I mean, looking at malaria, somebody having malaria, running fever, needing drugs, that makes a lot of sense. Ability to tie my adult life to my childhood is young. It is something that is less than 5 years old. I would say it started maybe sometime in 2017, 2018. That's when I really started paying attention. And even then, the real bulk of it is something that has been ongoing for slightly over 2 years.
So what were the markers of that period? How did you realize that you were in a different period of your life? How did you realize, well, something is not right, and I'm beginning to get to the bottom of it? But before you get to the bottom of it, you must have realized at some point that there are certain issues you were dealing with or that you needed to straighten. So what were the markers of that period?
It was a catastrophic relationship. Yes, it was a catastrophe. Before even the relationship part, it was a need to belong. It was a need to fit in. A need that I wasn't good enough, and I needed to be associated or to associate with certain people. I needed to do things a certain kind of way to be acceptable or to be normal. And that need led me into making certain decisions, and then it just became some sort of a downward spiral. That need for association.
Without considering whether it's good for you, whether it's what you want deep down, or what is good for you deep down.
They did. I'm not sure I even knew there was such thing as a
The deep down.
So anyway, and then it is when that happened, then I started looking at everything that happened. Like I had to hit a pause. I had to hit a pause and ask myself some very hard questions, like, what the hell is this? What happened? Why did I get here? And then I had to start looking back, and then I started doing a bit of reading. And then that is also, for the very first time, I had to talk to a psychiatrist. Before then, in school, in theory, you learn about such things as suicidal ideations and such kind of things, and that's something that happens to people. Growing up, in Luo we say nganeno dere. People commit suicide, but it never quite gets to you. It's those things that can never happen to me, can never be me. That's why I hate this phrase, can never be me, because you never really know until it's actually you. Anyway, so at this point, it was on the team. It was an option. Suicide was an option. And then I realized, something is off.
And it's interesting that suicide was coming as an option at a time when, in the view of the people around you, like myself, for instance, you were such a prolific person, right? You're happy, you have a good job. I mean, you're a doctor. I mean, of course, we know if you're struggling with the money, then sometimes the living environment is not the best. Because either you'll find yourself living in a slum area where probably the hygiene and sanitation is not so good. Maybe the house is leaking. I don't know. What was the situation like?
It was not good. Grass-thatched house that required correcting from time to time. And we had this blessing of seeing the stars at night, sleeping. Hope you get the point.
I get the point.
Yes, that was one of the blessings of your sleeping. You're in your bedroom, you're looking up, and you can see the stars. That tells you the kind of living environment that at some point was there. Thank God it's only the past, but yes.
Yeah, we thank God that it was only in the past. And so you guys, how many siblings in total?
10, but at any one time, not all of us were there.
Were in the house?
No, yeah. Spanning a number of years, 20 plus years. So the firstborn and the lastborn quite new. But so by the time some were coming into the pictures, others were already out, maybe in school, in college, married. Yes. So at any one time we would be like even 6 or 5 or 7. Occasionally all of us would be there, but that's a really rare thing to date for us.
It will all be under the same roof at the same time.
Yes, the 10 of us all together at the same time. It's not a common thing.
And so when it rained?
When it rained? We just harvested water from right within the living room.
You're making such fun out of it. That means you've found a very positive way of dealing with them, because I mean it's not the best experience. I mean, you don't want to be sleeping and having it rain on you maybe throughout the night, putting pots and pans all over.
Be a good chance to snuggle closer. And now when it rained, you are at smaller space because the rest you are sharing with the earth. So you form a tighter circle.
But you must have had very great parents also, looking back, because to raise 10 children under difficulty, under such financial difficulty, and to have all of you get to a point in their lives where somebody can stand and say, I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer. Your younger sister is now at JKUAT studying engineering.
Yes.
So I think you must have had good guidance. Because some of the things I've learned is, even, I don't know if you've read Viola Davis's book.
No, I haven't.
She's written a new book. You need to find it and read it. I know you'll like it.
Yes.
So Viola grew up under very adverse circumstances.
I did watch the Nini though.
The interview with the Oprah. Oh yeah. So you got a bit of an idea of what her life was like. So she's a very successful woman, but she also started from very humble beginnings. And one thing she said is, not everybody made it out. like her parents tried their best, they went to schools, they worked hard, just like you said, school was their plan, A, B, C, up to Z. But not everybody made it out because for them it was different. They were growing up poor in an urban setting. So there was the influence of drugs. There was just the money shame, you know, going to school and not having the best hygiene and people laughing at you, probably not wearing the best clothes and feeling like so. Siblings handle these things differently. So for her, some of them made it out. Of course, they have to go to therapy later as adults, but some of them did not make it out. So it means they got pregnant as teens. Some of them got married early. Some of them got into drugs and they have never managed to get out of it. Some of them got sexually abused, and there are lifelong experiences that have stayed with them to date. So I think for your case, it's a really good thing that your parents really worked hard and all of you managed to rise above the difficulty and have something for themselves. Or am I speculating? Or I'm filling in the blanks and I should let you
take
speak.
a whole other 2 hours to talk about. So let's just say they did offer guidance. Like I said, that phrase I told you about, education is the best investment one can make. This is a single best investment that our parents made for us, like drumming it into us. Yes. And then, like I've said, a lot of my schooling and even my siblings, it takes a village. Let me put it like that. So it wasn't entirely my parents, but it took a village. Let's just say it did take a village. And it's because of the village that I'm here, that I am who I am today. Yes.
So, well, generational poverty, Helen.
Yes.
I see you guys are working hard, and I remember you brought up the issue of your sister Joanne and how she's a firstborn.
Yes, she is.
And how she's really stood with the family at the expense of probably some of her needs.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, she has had to sacrifice a lot. If she wasn't doing for us what she did, and sometimes continues to do, she'll probably be a billionaire by now. Yes.
Black tax, Helen.
Yes.
It's a story well known to a lot of Africans.
That is it. She's had to pay more than her fair share of it. Yes. She took care of me once I got to Lada. You know, it's interesting because from staying out of school for over a year to being in a situation where I was technically never sent home for school fees. It's very interesting, and it was because of her. And then joining college and being in college and still, you know, having to call her and her having to chip in. And then there were my other siblings. So the other thing was like, one of the things I wanted to do was help her. Because remember, I'm the fifth, we are 10. After me, there are 5 more. Yes, and they were all in school. So I needed to get done with school so that I could help her, so that we could take care of this lot together. This was just the school aspect. There were other things that needed to be taken care of. Yes, and I just needed to get done with school and let's join hands and know what we could do together. So the issue of black tax, it's resources by definition are scarce, and needs are a lot. My own needs of people around me, and then, like I said, it took a village.
And you're trying so hard also to make sure that everybody rises together, that nobody is left behind. So you do not have the luxury of enjoying your money because you feel like you're enjoying your money at the expense of everybody else. So that, you know, black tax is funny, especially in the African setup. we've only begun calling it black tax in the recent past. But back then it was just an expectation. It was a given. The first person to make it out had the responsibility
You have
of
to
taking
go back and bring everyone else.
Yes, of taking care of everybody else. Because if you didn't do that, you run the risk of falling back again into this vicious cycle of poverty and recycling it over and over. Because the moment you make it out and then you keep yourself aloof, then Helen is not going to be a doctor, or your younger sister is not going to be an engineer, or somebody else is not going to be a teacher. So it's an interesting thing the way we talk about black tax today. We are only beginning to go deeper behind it and define it and look at it as a burden. Well, we could, but in the African way, it has always just been one more way of lifting everybody else up and ensuring that everybody else is okay. So that was a very brave thing of her, Helen. People have run away from some of these responsibilities, and especially being a woman, because it's something that was mostly tasked on men. Yeah, he's the older man. He has to figure all of this out. But she's a woman. You are a woman. But even when I knew you, you had certain responsibilities towards your siblings, of paying school fees, on taking care of ABCD. So and so is going to school. She's coming back on this day. I need to pick her. I need to drop her. I need to pay for all of this. So I think it's a very, very brave and selfless stand to take for the sake of everybody else. Yeah. So on the matter of personal agency, and the way sometimes growing up in poverty takes away that personal agency from you, it sort of makes you voiceless. And this is not just for you, even your siblings or even your parents.
Poverty takes away your dignity. That
True.
is the truth.
Mm.
When you are poor, you are at the mercy of people. There's this thing of everybody has an intrinsic value to them, sense of dignity. I'm not sure if that's true with poverty. In poverty, no. Actually, I'm sure it's not true.
Why? What is it about poverty that makes that go away?
You are at the mercy of people. You pick the crumbs that are thrown at you. You don't get to question some things.
Even in places where you have the right to question.
I think I'm blurring timelines here, but yeah, sometimes because you can be out of the poverty, but it's the poverty out of you.
You've left the experience, but the experience is still
it's in you. So you're still operating from that place. So you find that even in places where you should be voicing certain things, you don't. You still question whether they listen, whether your voice matters. So growing up in it, your dignity is literally, like at that stage, literally, you don't have that sense of dignity. Like it's denied of you. But then if it was a matter of a house, you are living in a better house now. You're probably even driving your own car. You are able to afford meals comfortably. Your basic needs are taken care of. But then again, there's that part of, am I worthy? That part, that thing that was in you, the experience, what it was, what it left in you. Yeah. So poverty takes away the dignity of a person.
There's a way some of those experiences, like you say, they don't really live. They just stay there dormant, waiting for the best time to come out. For people who have faced adversity in terms of violence, it's always maybe we'll just be having an animated conversation. And if I raise my hand, you'll feel like I'm going to hit you, and then you'll react as if you'll start to defend yourself. So even in poverty, I know such experiences exist where some of the experiences you had are still deep inside of you. And we all know trauma is a reaction. It is not a memory. So you find that some of your life's choices, you're laughing. Some of your life choices are informed
Yes.
by your early childhood experiences. I know you have something to say about that.
My choice of food.
Yes.
My favorite food being rice and beans. I've always said it's my favorite, but it's it's interesting because just a few days ago we were having that discussion with my big sister, and actually I've had this discussion with the two of my sisters. Why do I love rice and beans so much? I mean, there are better things.
Why?
Do I? And then I realized, growing up, it was one of those elite foods. It was one of those elite foods, and then back then it marked, it was a sign of wealth. You know, it's weird, and it just grew up like that. To date, I think I'm in the process of changing my favorite food from rice and beans.
I think rice and beans is a good meal. You don't have to
It
sacrifice
is,
it for the sake of your healing.
but it can't be my favorite though. Yeah, it took me a while. It's like I told you, these healing journeys, it's pretty recent. Like the rice and beans healing part is literally 2 months old.
Oh, you actually made the realization by yourself, eh? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because some of those questions are even alone, they're hard questions to ask of yourself. Some of the realities are not easy to face, and some of the ones are not easy to confront. So we take it one wound at a time.
One step at a time.
Yes.
Except sometimes the wounds overlap, and then you don't even know. You don't even know where
you
to
just
start.
shut down.
Yes,
Shut down and let everything lie. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, what would you say your relationship with money is now as an adult?
Can I say I'm still figuring it out?
Yeah. Well, that's a valid answer.
What's my relationship with money?
Money.
I need a lot of it. It signifies some form of freedom. It signifies value. Having and maybe a touching sense of self-worth to it. Something that I'm also learning to get away from. No, this realization that without all this, you have value. I have value. Without, if everything was stripped off, I still have value as a person.
But you know, something is, you always think it's just about money. But you know, issues of self-worth, they go beyond the borders of money. Even though we might probably want to relate them directly to money, but if you're having issues with your self-worth, then even when you have all the money, still it will manifest in other areas of your life. It will manifest in your relationships. It will manifest in your friendships. I think we've had this conversation. Remember, it will manifest in your relationships, so that maybe you will even choose the wrong people, you will associate with the wrong friends, or when certain differences come up, you feel attacked. You just feel attacked for no reason, even when the intention of the speaker was not to attack you.
Yeah, it's very true. It's true. So the thing is, at least now I'm getting to take a step back and look at things for what they are. It doesn't always work, but I'm getting there. I know there's not there, it's always a journey, but at least it's better than yesterday. I'm beginning to, even the question you just asked about my relationship with money, getting to learn what money is and what it is not, what it should not be, what I've made it in the past, wealth in general. You know, this fantasy about wanting to own it, amass, and get stuff. Yes. From my own experience, looking back, I think sometimes it's good that we interrogate our journeys and heal from them from some of the things we experienced, some things that were our normal. And then as we grow up, we realize that they were never really normal.
Poverty is not normal.
Poverty is not normal. And because it shapes everything around you. And then you begin to approach life from your experiences, which are not necessarily the best. And it's sort of everything you touch is laced with some form of trauma. The way you approach relationships, the way you approach financial matters, the way you approach education, the way you approach even such things as dressing. It's always laced with this thing of poverty. And then it also limits how you experience life. It basically limits your experience of life. So you are not free to blossom fully into who you are supposed to be. Even how you relate with people, because remember the part about what poverty does to your sense of dignity. So then you interact with people from a point of suspicion. You don't really believe that people can be who they say they are. There's this part of you that there's always some ulterior motive, you see, because like growing up and then for you to experience certain things, the people that would give them to you had some form of strings attached to it. And then you grow up thinking everybody who gives you anything or, will always tie some strings to it. So
it's always a condition.
It messes up just about everything. So coming to the point of what I experienced wasn't okay, wasn't normal, and it left me with certain scars that need to be healed so that I'm able to approach the world from a healed point. It's always important. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's always important that we look back and we try to reach back and heal part of ourselves.
Thank you very, very, very much for coming on set. It's been such an eye-opening conversation. I hope to have you on the set many more times because the truth is that we have not finished up this conversation. We have not exhausted it. There is still a lot more that we need to talk about. You remember from our previous conversations?
Yes.
And you know that there's still a lot more.
Yeah.
So thank you.